the insurance here, health insurance, is far better. You know, I had a surgery on my left eye. I paid like 10만 원. Yeah, for that. In America, it would have been like $5,000. You know what I mean? Like an hour later, it was done. I'm like, what is going on right now? Right? But it's crazy because I called my mom. I said, Mom, listen, I'm going home. We have martial law right now. She said, stop playing, boy. I said, Mom, I'm dead serious. Like, I'm not joking right now. Hello, my name is Khalil. I am 29 years old. I'm from Washington, D.C., USA. I came to Korea almost 5 years ago. Right now I'm just teaching English and taking it every day, you know? Yeah.
It was 5 years ago that you come to Korea. At the time it was like COVID. I think it is a little bit hard to decide to come to Korea.
Honestly, like, okay, I'll give you the full story.
Yeah.
Okay, so I finished college 2020. It was maybe August 2020. And at that time, I had finished my degree in information systems. But because it was Corona, like you said, it was COVID, it was really hard to find a to find a position. No one was hiring. Everything in America was just like completely stopped. So I was just driving Uber, you know, and I had like an idea sometime of, you know, like teaching English, but I didn't know where. My first idea was Japan, but the borders were closed. And I got hired at a school in Saitama, like right outside of Tokyo. And they wanted me to come in December. And by this time it was 2021, and I'm looking at the clock like this is too long. And my mom suggested Korea. She loved K-dramas, and I had some siblings who were in the military who did some time in Korea as well. She said, just check it out. So I got hired pretty quickly. And when I arrived here, I did the quarantine in an apartment for 2 weeks. And I was going crazy. I was just watching TV all day long, talking to my family. And when I finished the quarantine, I thought the way Korea dealt with the virus was like a million times better than America. I don't know if you remember, but we had the QR and everything like that. So it was pretty easier. It made me more comfortable compared to back home because no one was like masking. It was just in America, it wasn't really much order. So when I came here, it was pretty simple for me because I had my vaccines and I had my QR code. So it wasn't too difficult for me, you know. It was just like normal life, but you had to wear a mask. It wasn't too hard for me, honestly.
So you already knew that Korea's situation, COVID situation is much better than US or...
I didn't really know because the most that I knew about Korea regarding COVID was in the state of Maryland, where my family lives. The president at the time donated masks to Maryland.
How was your life at the time?
To be honest, as a foreigner here, it's pretty easy to find people to meet because you have the foreign population who are here alone as well and they're looking for friends. And then you have the Koreans who are very interested and they want to practice their English. So it wasn't too difficult for me to adjust. Compared to back home, honestly, because I'm African American, and a lot of Koreans don't know that there's a large population of African Americans like on the East Coast who are Muslim. We're American just like everyone else. Back home, I grew up with, you know, mainly people who are not Muslim. You know, my family's pretty mixed. You have some Muslims, you have Christians, you know, stuff like that. So when I came here, I didn't really have too much of an expectation because growing up, like I said, I didn't have a lot of Muslims around me. I had some friends, but it wasn't like versus like other places and cities and things like that. So when I came here and I met people, it was a comforting, you know. I'm like, wow, there are people like me who are here as well. It was very nice, you know. A lot of people from like, you know, like Uzbekistan. I lived in Songnam. There's so many Uzbeks there.
You're from States. You can hear something from them, so...
Honestly, when it comes to people in their 20s here, you have like maybe 4 or 5 different types. You have the students who are just here for a few months, the English teachers, models, a lot of people in entertainment, and you just have the travelers. When it came to teaching, pretty easy to make connections and meet people just out, you know. How was your school? how long have you worked there? Do they pay well? What's the neighborhood like? Things like that. So it wasn't too difficult on that aspect. But if you're going outside of teaching, you need to do some serious work with like networking, finding programs. Because even if you work at a company, you know, is international or they speak English well, being able to communicate with them in Korean helps a lot more. So if you're a foreigner, you have to talk to people. If you are too reserved or shy, it's not going to work because you have to put yourself out there. You have to go to a space that's made for people to talk about this, and they give me business cards and things like that. So, and there's a lot of programs too for foreigners.
You finished your living life in Seongnam. I just want to know the longer plan or at the time.
When I first thought about everything, the pros and the cons, right? Living in Korea is far cheaper compared to living in America. Don't really understand that aspect, but when you live in America and you have to pay $1,400 for a small apartment a month, and they check your credit like aggressively and all these things, it can be really hard. Also, the insurance here, health insurance, is far better. You know, I had a surgery on my left eye. I paid like 10만 원. Yeah, for that. In America, it would have been like $5,000. You know what I mean? So one of the reasons why I was comfortable were the benefits that made life easier here for me. And also, I felt safer here. Where I grew up, it wasn't like a crazy bad area. There was gun violence and stuff like that. When I was in high school, there was a student who was killed, and he ran away and they killed him. The very next day, another student was killed. And the school I went to was pretty rough. And you're just thinking like, people are dying. You understand what I mean? When I was 16, and I lost someone to gun violence. Went to middle school with him. When I was 19, my closest friend was killed. And yeah, gun violence as well. So it's like, for me, I was living with a constant anxiety. When I walk, I have to look this way. If someone says something to me, I have to be this way. So when I came here, I can be myself. I don't have to worry about that stuff. You know, like I can go to art museums, I can go to vintage stores and without having to worry about someone trying to steal from me, or it just made me able to relax. At the first Hagwon, I remember telling my family and my friends, like, the kids here seem so soft, man. Like, they're just so happy and soft. And, you know, one of my friends, he said, well, they don't have to worry about the same stuff. And I enjoyed that innocence that I feel like a lot of kids in America don't have anymore.
Want to enter startup or what kind of company?
Some of them are startup companies. I've looked into like Samsung and things like that, you know. But for me personally, I know in Korea everyone's like, you have to have this big company, you have to work for that company. I don't care. As long as I can get a job and get the experience, everything else will be fine. My biggest concern is, do I have enough money to save, take care of myself? Do I feel like I have done something with my life that is fulfilling to me? Is my family proud? The size of the company is not really relevant at all.
Are there something that you're liked about Korea?
The food. I remember my mom, she used to eat kimchi. I'm like, why? What is this red stuff? Why? She's like, it's so good. I'm like, the land of red food. Everything here is red. Yeah. So when I came here, it was a little difficult because a lot of the jjigae has pork in it. So only kimchi jjigae, you know, stuff like that. So most of the time, if I go to a Korean restaurant, I have to ask questions to a place I know it's no pork, or I know what doesn't have pork. You know, amazing. Jjigae, amazing. Samgyetang, jjimdak. I love jjimdak. Stuff like that, yeah. So yeah, like yesterday, I had hweshik. I don't know the name, but it was like snails, like bibimbap, and it had like snails in it. I don't know the name.
골뱅이. snail.
Yeah, snail.
Yeah.
골뱅이. Yeah. It was so good.
There was some big political events in Korea.
Yeah.
Demonstration.
Yes.
Yeah, in just inside in front of the Gwanghwamun.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah. And you saw that. But
Lee Jae-myung was there, right? He was like
Lee
jumping
Jae-myung was
over the
there.
gate. That was crazy.
And how do you think about it?
Martial law happened because I was getting gas, and he said, bro, what's martial law? And I said, oh, that's when the military takes over, and they have control. I said, what? What are you talking about? I looked at my phone, and I started looking. I was like, I gotta go home. I have a cat at home. What if we're what if we're stuck inside? Like an hour later, it was done. I'm like, what is going on right now? Right? But it's crazy because I called my mom. I said, Mom, listen, I'm going home. We have martial law right now. She said, stop playing, boy. I said, Mom, I'm dead serious. Like, I'm not joking right now. And so she was worried, and an hour later it was over. And in the morning, she saw it on TV, like the whole world did. And she was like, what the hell is going on over there in Korea? It was crazy. But thanks to the internet, we saw so many things, But compared to America, the demonstrations here are far more peaceful. Because back home it gets violent. And it goes on for days. People die. Police are just shooting tear gas at people. It gets really bad. But both of our countries have history of political stuff and people being angry, so things like that never shock me. Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I say this to people and some people get offended, some people don't understand it. And I tell people, I say, Korea in some parts is still developing. I said when it comes to economics, money, and things like that, or just exports like Samsung, Hyundai, all this stuff, it's given so much to the world. Korea has built up the economy so quickly, but there's still some things they're still working on. Korea hasn't been independent for a very long time. You know what I mean? The war was not very long ago. So Korea is still figuring some things out. You understand what I mean? So with that being said, it's normal for countries to have these issues. You understand? But I think Korea has dealt with it far better compared to what we can see in the other parts of the world. You know what I mean? Even with these issues, you can still safely go to work. Kids can go to school. You have your health care. You can still go out clubbing if you want to. It's not like you're stuck in your home. It's not dangerous to go, get milk at the grocery store, So even with the political issues that have happened, it's still much better compared to what we've seen in other parts of the world.
Are there some difficulties when you live in Korea?
There are just some things that annoy me. I don't go to clubs and stuff like that much, but every time I do, there's always some random drunk guy. Hey bro, where you from, bro? And it's if you hear that for 5 years, it's all right, man, But my buddy Niddle is far more softer and more social than me. Because when I go out, I'm just talking to my friends. Hey bro, where you from, bro? I'm just, and then Niddle's we're from America. It gets a little annoying answering the same questions over and over again, right? Or if I just say 와 한국말 잘해. 어떡해 와. I'm I just asked where the bathroom is, man. You know what I mean? If you go to America, excuse me, where's the bathroom? No one's gonna be like, oh my God, your English is amazing. It doesn't happen that way. People always say you're so hip hop, you're so cool. I'm bro, leave me alone. Leave me alone, man. But that's it. That you're so cool. I mean, because black culture has black American culture is everywhere in the world. The baggy clothes, the hip hop, the dancing, everything. Even K-pop, they have rappers in K-pop. And we know it comes from our culture and we enjoy it. So there's always the cool aspect. But if you hear that all the time,
before you came here, you don't think it would be dangerous because of North Korea?
nah.
No?
Nah.
Yeah.
I never thought about that one time.
Really?
There was one time I saw the alert for the poop balloons. You remember that? And I just looked at it. I'm like, is this like high school pranks? You know what I mean? But as for like safety with like Kim Jong, I never thought about that, man. Because if you think about it from a realistic standpoint, it makes no sense for him to like do anything here. It just doesn't make sense. Let's say they bomb Seoul, then he's also bombing Pyongyang. And then like if they do that, okay, cool. Then America's here. China comes, and then the Australians come, and then the English come, and then like the Russians come. Like it just doesn't help anything.
You had a friend in military in Korea, so maybe because of that, some basic information you had.
Yeah, I've had friends from back home come to military as well. One of my high school friends, he was in Pyeongtaek for a little while. One of my neighborhood friends, actually, I grew up with him, a kid named Norman. He's in Camp Casey right now, like 45 minutes from the one. And they all say the same thing. My younger cousin was here as well. My cousin was here, so it was nice having family. You know, and they all say the same thing, like, man, we're just chilling. We do normal drills, normal training. He said, but you know, it's nothing serious. You know, we're just doing our duty. You know, we work with the Koreans and we're just here, you know, for each other, you know? Yeah. But that's one thing that made me feel comfortable here. Because of the close relationship our countries have. You know, like genuinely, I feel like a real connection to Koreans. Because our countries are very close to each other. So in my mind, even if, let's say, North Korea invades, I'm with you. Let's go. For real, we're going together, you know? It made me feel comfortable for that, seriously.
Because US and Korea is allies.
Exactly.
That can help you feel better in Korea.
My dad was in the military for a very long time. He went active duty during the Iraq War. Iraq War happened, he had to go full time. So my whole life, until he retired, and you know, even now after he passed, like I have military all around me. So for me, seeing that in my family and coming here and seeing military here, and it was just so normal for me. You know, in my mind, these are our allies. You know, we work with them, they work with us. If something happens, we help them, they help us. It's that simple.
What's your plans from now in Korea?
I'm just very focused on studying the language and building myself within my career outside of teaching English. I'm at a very important bridge in my life to go to the next level. So I'm trying to get myself more comfortable with Korean working culture, understanding what companies need, working hours, what can I do to help the company, and what can I do to get hired. You know what I mean? So I'm just very focused on my goals right now.